Somewhere in southern Iran, in the province of Hormozgan, the lights went out, and they did not come back on. Not because of a storm, not because of a blackout in the ordinary sense of the word, but because the most powerful military on Earth had made a decision that it had been threatening to make for weeks, and then, quietly, methodically, in the dead of night, actually did it. The United States stopped hitting only radar sites and missile launchers. It started hitting the things that keep a country of 90 million people alive: bridges, highways, railway lines, power stations, and a desalination plant on the Iranian coast that supplied drinking water to roughly 10,000 people across 20 villages. And here is the part that no one fully saw coming, the part that turned a strike campaign into something far larger and far more dangerous. Within 24 hours, that same kind of target, a power and water desalination plant, was burning. But not in Iran. It was burning in Kuwait. A country that did not fire a single shot. A country whose only crime, in Tehran's eyes, was hosting American forces and sitting on the wrong side of the Persian Gulf. Kuwait paid the price for a war it did not start. And tonight, I am going to show you exactly how that happened, who confirmed it, and why this specific escalation, infrastructure for infrastructure, may be the most dangerous turn this entire war has taken. Before we go one step further, let me tell you how this video is built, because a story with this many competing claims from this many governments demands it stated plainly, up front. Everything I am about to lay out is sourced to a named outlet or an official statement. The Associated Press, reporting from Dubai, The Washington Post, The Los Angeles Times, NBC News, Australia's ABC, Fortune, and official statements from US Central Command, Iran's Energy Ministry, and Kuwait's Ministry of Electricity, Water, and Renewable Energy. Where a claim is confirmed by multiple outlets, I will say so. Where a claim comes only from Iranian state media, from Tasnim, from IRNA, from Press TV, or only from the IRGC, I will label it clearly, because a state at war is not a neutral narrator of its own performance. And where something remains genuinely unverified, I will tell you that too, instead of pretending certainty I do not have. This channel does not do clickbait dressed up as analysis. We separate what happened from what is claimed. Stay with me to the end, because the twist in this story, the thing the headlines got backwards, completely changes how you should read who is actually winning here. To understand why hitting a bridge or a power plant is so much bigger than it sounds, you have to understand what these targets actually are. The Strait of Hormuz is the reason this entire war exists. In peacetime, roughly 1/5 of all the oil and natural gas traded on Earth pass through that narrow channel of water. Iran sits on the northern shore of it. And when the US and Israel launched this war on February 28th, Iran did the one thing it always threatened to do. It effectively closed the strait to shipping. That single move sent oil prices soaring and handed Tehran enormous leverage. So the American strategy shifted. If Iran was going to choke the world's oil supply, the US would choke Iran itself. The bridges near Bandar Abbas, Iran's main port, are not random targets. According to the Associated Press, roughly half of Iran's entire trade moves through that port. Cut the bridges and the highways and the rail lines connecting Bandar Abbas to Tehran, and you begin strangling the flow of goods to 90 million people. Hit the power stations in extreme summer heat, and you turn the pressure on the population itself. This is siege logic. And the stakes could not be higher, because the moment you make civilian infrastructure a legitimate target, your enemy gets to make the same argument right back at you, against your allies. So let's walk through exactly what happened, in order, with the sources attached to each step. The backdrop. Last month's interim ceasefire had collapsed. According to the Associated Press and ABC News, it fell apart around July 7th, when Iran struck ships in the Strait of Hormuz and the United States responded with airstrikes. Iran then declared the strait closed. Washington reimposed a naval blockade on Iranian ports, and the daily exchange of strikes resumed. Then came the threats. President Trump, according to multiple outlets including the Los Angeles Times, publicly returned to warning that he would target Iran's power stations and bridges specifically, to force Tehran to loosen its grip on the strait. In his address to the American public on Thursday, July 16th, he insisted, and I'm quoting as reported by the AP, "We are likewise winning big in Iran, and you will see the fruits of that labor very, very shortly." Overnight into Friday, July 17th, those threats became strikes. Iranian state television, cited by the AP and the Washington Post, reported that U.S. airstrikes hit bridges in the southern province of Hormuzgan, in and around the coastal city of Bandar Abbas. According to ABC News, at least 5 bridges were struck across the country. 7 people were reported killed at Bandar Abbas, where a train station was also hit. That same day, Iran acknowledged something for the first time. Its energy ministry, as reported by the AP and Los Angeles Times, issued a public call for people in southern provinces to use less power because those areas were, quote, experiencing extreme heat and attacks on power infrastructure. That was Iran itself, admitting on the record that its power grid was under attack. U.S. Central Command confirmed it had concluded its 7th consecutive night of strikes, saying its targets included surveillance sites, military logistics infrastructure, underground weapons storage, and maritime capabilities. Notably, CENTCOM did not acknowledge striking any civilian infrastructure directly. Then Iran retaliated, and this is where Kuwait enters the story. According to the AP, the Washington Post, NBC News, and ABC News, Iran launched missiles at U.S. allied Gulf states, including Qatar, Bahrain, and Kuwait. In Kuwait, authorities confirmed that a power and water desalination plant was struck, causing widespread damage and a fire. Remember that number. About 90% of Kuwait's drinking water comes from desalination. Then it happened again. The very next day, Saturday, July 18th, Iran struck Kuwait a second time. The Kuwait Petroleum Corporation confirmed a strike on an oil facility that injured several people, and Kuwaiti authorities confirmed a second hit on a desalination plant, forcing power generation units offline. Kuwait's Defense Ministry spokesman, Brigadier General Saud al-Otaibi, described, quote, severe damage to oil and electricity facilities. The country's energy ministry urged civilians to ration power during peak hours in a summer where temperatures were climbing past 110 degrees Fahrenheit. And on the Iranian side that same weekend, per the AP and Fortune, the U.S. hit an electricity and desalination plant in the coastal village of Banji. Iran's semi-official Tasnim agency, quoting the local water company chief, said drinking water to several villages across western Jas County, home to around 10,000 people, was disrupted. The Iranian embassy in India called it a war crime. So there it is, infrastructure for infrastructure, water for water, power for power. Both sides now openly targeting the systems that keep civilians alive. Here is what most of the coverage rushed past. The headlines framed this as U.S. hits bridges, Iran hits Kuwait, tit for tat. A grim but symmetrical exchange. But look closer, because the asymmetry is the whole story. When the United States strikes an Iranian bridge or power plant, it is hitting its declared enemy. When Iran strikes a Kuwaiti desalination plant, it is hitting a bystander. Kuwait is not at war with Iran. Kuwait's civilians did not vote for this. Their only exposure is geographic and diplomatic. They sit nearby, and they host American forces. And this is not new behavior. ABC News noted something crucial. When Iran hit a Kuwaiti desalination plant back on March 30th, it was seen as a major escalation. Now it is happening twice in 2 days, and barely holding the top of the news cycle. That is how escalation works. It normalizes. Each new line crossed makes the next one look ordinary. The second thing everyone misses: desalination is not a convenience in the Gulf. It is survival infrastructure. The rich Arab Gulf states depend on plants that turn seawater into drinking water to make their desert cities livable at all. Take that away in 110-degree heat, and you are not disrupting an economy. You are threatening the basic ability of millions of people to stay hydrated. That is why UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, through his spokesperson, singled out his concern over, quote, attacks on civilian infrastructure in Iran and across the region. The war stopped being about military bases the moment the TAPS became a target. Now here is the twist, the part that flips the entire narrative you've been building in your head. The thumbnail, the headlines, the framing all suggest that America is now dominant. Knocking out Iran's power, collapsing its bridges, cutting Bandar Abbas off from Tehran. A superpower flexing at will. And on the surface, that's true. But ask yourself the harder question. If the United States is winning so decisively, why did it have to escalate to bridges and power plants at all? Here's the uncomfortable answer buried in the reporting. Iran still had the strait. Despite 7 straight nights of American strikes, crossings through the Strait of Hormuz had fallen to a 3-week low of just 8 vessels a day, according to marine traffic. Oil was above $86 a barrel. The blockade was hurting the world, not just Iran. The US wasn't hitting infrastructure from a position of total victory, it was hitting infrastructure because the military strikes alone had not broken Iran's grip on the waterway. And the retaliation against Kuwait? That wasn't weakness on Iran's part, that was a message. Iran was demonstrating that it could reach out and hurt America's allies, the wealthy Gulf states America is sworn to protect, and that the US could not stop every missile. Jordan intercepted incoming fire. Bahrain sounded its sirens twice. Qatar took shelter. But Kuwait's plant still burned. Twice. So the real picture is not a superpower crushing a helpless regime. It's 2 sides who have both run out of purely military options, now reaching for each other's civilians because neither can force a decision on the battlefield. That's not dominance. That's a stalemate turning ugly. And this raises the question I genuinely want your take on, so drop it in the comments before you finish watching. If both sides are now hitting water and power plants, infrastructure that civilians depend on to survive, is there any meaningful line left to cross before this becomes a full regional war? Or has that line already been crossed and we just haven't admitted it yet? Type stalemate if you think neither side can win this militarily. Type escalation if you think this only ends when it gets much bigger first. I read these and I pin the most thoughtful takes. And if you want the follow-up analysis, because there is a Red Sea dimension and a Saudi angle developing right now that connects directly to this, subscribe and turn on the bell, because that's the next video. Now here's my personal analysis. This is me reading the strategic picture, clearly labeled as my interpretation, not reported fact. I think the shift to infrastructure targeting marks the moment this war entered its most dangerous phase, and not for the reason most people assume. The danger isn't the bridges, it's the precedent. The moment the United States established that Iranian power stations and desalination plants were fair game, it handed Iran a rhetorical and strategic weapon. Because now Iran can strike Kuwaiti, Bahraini, and Qatari infrastructure and frame it as proportional response. You hit our water, we hit theirs. That's exactly the argument Iranian officials made, warning they'd respond in kind. Deputy Foreign Minister Kazim Garibabadi told Fars that Iran would follow the US in suspending its commitments under last month's memorandum. Foreign Minister Arachi said Iran would not let its people's blood be spilled in vain. Here's the strategic trap. The Gulf monarchies, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, are the ones absorbing Iran's retaliation, and they never wanted this war on their soil. Every burning desalination plant increases the pressure on those governments to push Washington toward a ceasefire, because they cannot survive a prolonged campaign where their cities go dark and dry. So Iran's Kuwait strikes aren't really aimed at Kuwait. They're aimed at Washington, through Kuwait, to make America's own allies beg the US to stop. And there's the political clock. Reporting notes Trump faces pressure ahead of November's congressional elections, with oil prices climbing and his own campaign promise to avoid prolonged Middle East wars now looking broken. Iran knows this. Iran's entire strategy right now, in my read, is to make time and pain do the work its military cannot, to outlast an American president on a political timeline. That's why I don't buy the "America is winning big" framing. You don't escalate to your enemy's water supply when you're winning. You do it when the clock is against you. But let me leave the strategy behind for a moment, because underneath every one of these confirmed facts are people who never chose any of this. In 20 villages in western Jask County, Iran, roughly 10,000 ordinary people turned on their taps and found the water gone. Not because of anything they did, but because of a war being fought over a shipping lane hundreds of miles away. And in Kuwait, a country that fired nothing, threatened no one, and simply had the misfortune of geography, Families were told to ration their electricity in 110-degree heat, while firefighters ran toward a burning desalination plant that stood between them and drinking water. That's what hitting infrastructure actually means when you strip away the language of strategy. It means a child in a Gulf apartment with no air conditioning in a desert summer. It means a village with dry pipes. It means ordinary people, on both sides of a border they'll never cross, paying the price for decisions made by men they'll never meet. Kuwait paid a price it never agreed to. And the hardest truth in all of this is that if the pattern holds, Kuwait will not be the last. I'm Alex. This is Alex on World Affairs. I'll keep separating what's confirmed from what's claimed because you deserve the truth, sourced and straight. Stay sharp, and I'll see you in the next one.